241. 241 chapters since we've gotten the infamous quote of Gojo stating that in time, Yuji should be able to obtain Sukuna's curse technique. Now look guys, as long as we've been waiting for anything on this since the idea had been brought up, let's be real guys, at this point of the series, the question is no longer when Yuji will obtain Cleave, but will he? The series looks like it can be ending quite soon, and I only say looks like because people were saying the series was ending soon a year ago, and now we're still saying it to this day. So take that with a grain of salt. Anyways, what I'm getting at here is that it seems like time is running out for Yuji to obtain this technique, and I'm here to bet it all on red and say that Yuji will be getting this technique. And I'll even double down on this bet and say that he may already have it. And in this video, that's exactly what I'll be going over. That being said, let's get into it. So I'm almost certain that Yuji will get Cleave, and that even at this point of the story, it makes sense for him to have it. With the Gojo quote being put into play from over 200 chapters ago, the foundation had been set for a while. But I come back to this quote because I want to examine another moment in the story that reinforces both Gojo's quote and the belief that Yuji should eventually obtain Cleave as well. In chapter 220, when Yuji answers Amai's question about him continuing to fight even if Sukuna has left his body, Yuji states this: "That doesn't change anything. We were never really working together in the first place." Shoko said that the current me is like a cursed item that was soaked in cursed energy, known as Sukuna. I don't think I really need to explain this quote much, but Yuji is now a weapon that was soaked in Sukuna's cursed energy, right? So let's couple this with Sukuna's quote about Nanami's blade when he begins to fight Ino and the other sorcerers. "That was stronger than imagined." Oh, I see. That dull thing. They made the 7-3 sorcerer's technique into a cursed tool. With it being a fact that normal weapons can become semi-cursed tools with the user's cursed energy alone, I believe the only way to explain Nanami's technique being imprinted onto his blade is due to always being soaked in this cursed energy. Just like how our boy Yuji was soaked in Sukuna's cursed energy for at least 3 months straight, 24/7, throughout the events of the series. Hold up though, because that isn't the only reason I wanted to bring up Yuji being a cursed tool at this point. I also wanted to bring up a theory that revolved around this plot point having a purpose in the story, or in other words, this theory, if it were true, would be the reason why Yuji being soaked in Sukuna's cursed energy was brought up in the first place. To quickly explain what it was, when Gojo activated his unlimited hollow purple against Sukuna in chapter 235, he comes out of the attack with less damage than Sukuna, and he explains that the main factor in this outcome was the attack being generated from his own cursed energy. So the same rule should apply when Sukuna attempts to attack Yuji, as Yuji is currently soaked in Sukuna's cursed energy, and it would allow Yuji to have more resistance than other sorcerers against Sukuna's attack, and this would be a contributing factor to his eventual triumph over Sukuna. But as we can see from the recent chapters, that doesn't seem to be helping him much. Sukuna has been carving holes in our boy over and over, and I almost feel bad for him at this point. I'm not going to outright say this theory's been debunked, as it makes complete sense, but I will say that it certainly has weakened over time. I believe by now, Yuji being a Sukuna cursed tool would have been brought up again if it were playing any role in allowing Yuji to eat Sukuna's attacks easier. At this point, I believe that plot point will be brought up when Yuji finally uses Cleave, and it will finally have served its purpose. Lastly, Yuji's entire existence seems to be a plan of Kenjaku's. With the kind of plotting that Kenjaku has been doing throughout the entire history of the series, I don't believe Yuji was born to have no curse technique without reason. And Kenjaku certainly knows good and well that Sukuna was going to imprint on Yuji in terms of curse energy and everything beyond it. There's not much we can say about Kenjaku, as his connections with Yuji and Yuji's creation are still unknown, but Yuji having no curse technique, Kenjaku saying that he expects a lot from Yuji when speaking to him personally, despite denying this when he's not present, and his ending to the story are all just very strange to me. I don't mean to bring him up as evidence or anything of the sort, but I will say do not count him and his whole deal with Yuji out just yet. To move on to my next topic surrounding the potential of Yuji obtaining Cleave, I want to address the fact that Yuji seems to already have a bunch of new techniques, so why would he still need Cleave at this point of the story? I'm going to be straight up and say that everything he has now is not going to be enough to defeat Sukuna when they have their one-on-one. That boy's going to need both Cleave and a couple of prayers when he has to step to Sukuna, especially if him winning that final battle is supposed to be convincing. Man, matter of fact, given that black box fire thing Sukuna be doing too, he needs everything. Yuji did also declare that he would become the strongest at some point, and him getting Cleave would bring him much closer to that, as sorcerers are typically more powerful and overwhelming the more options they have in battle, because it gives them more win conditions and it's another obstacle for their opponent to overcome. This is why Sukuna seems unbeatable to us as of recent chapters, and it's also why the 10 Shadows has always been considered to be the best technique in the series. Yuji obtaining Cleave opens his moveset more wide than it already is, and by proxy, increases his battle potency by a lot, so it can help him with his goal that he set a long time ago. Overall, my reasons for Yuji becoming the strongest are quite biased, but I believe he deserves it at this point. Yuji in terms of strength has never really shined as much as his supporting cast has, and I think Jujutsu Kaisen finally letting him shine in this area at the very end of the story would be great, as it would finally give him his moment as well. I think the writing may be intentional when it comes to this too, because it allows the rest of the cast to have their moments and shine. Meanwhile, Yuji doesn't feel as forgotten because, well, he's the main character. There is a strong counterpoint to this though, the only one I really don't have an answer for because I really agree with it that much, and I'll address that when I address all the potential counter arguments later on in the video. Lastly, I just think it falls in line with the trend of all Yuji's power-ups being given to him or obtained with either direct or indirect assistance of someone else, rather than him obtaining strength by only training or something of the like. To me, Yuji's growth in this manner is to show that one cannot do everything by themselves. A strong mirror to Gojo, who was born with everything he'd need and the talent to gain so much more on his own. If Yuji succeeds where Gojo fails when it comes to defeating Sukuna, it reinforces that you need others to lift you up, and being the ace that can do everything seems awesome and cool at the moment, but it always results in you failing every single time it matters. Back to Yuji though. I even believe that in terms of the high schoolers, he's currently the strongest, including the heavy hitters, but I'll readdress it at the end, as I'm sure a good amount of you have heard about me talk about this in previous videos, and there's gotta be at least one person sick of it. So with that being said, now we're going to head into dangerous territories and theory crafting, and it's now time to finally tackle that topic. Yes, there is even the chance that Yuji already has Cleave. Let's go over the evidence. So first, there's already the obvious moments of Sukuna having that cut on his hand due to his fight with Yuji, and how he's unable to regenerate from it before he takes the bath. If this cut did regenerate and fade away after the bath, it would show that he could not regenerate his soul while it's fighting to control Megami's, or at least that's a reasonable assumption we can make. I bring up his soul because Yuji has the ability to directly attack the soul, so him using Cleave should be able to also hurt the soul. It'd also be a narrative, meta reason as to why Maki didn't just cut Sukuna with the blade there and then, because if she did, it probably would have collapsed Sukuna, although she does question otherwise. Now, we'll step into a moment of chapter 251, and this is a controversial discussion on some sites, so go into this with an open mind. But after Yuji uses Supernova on Sukuna, we see Sukuna's arm get sliced off. Some have come to theorize that Yuji opening his hand was actually the activation of Dismantle at that moment. This theory is founded on the fact that every time Yuji uses a curse technique starting from 222, the attack is never really shown to be activated and the user has been left vague. For example, the open-ended soul swap with Yuji and Kusakabe, and the first time we see Yuji use blood manipulation against Sukuna with the piercing blood coming from the sky while Higuruma was fighting. In the page that was shown, Gege does not show the cause of Sukuna's arm being cut off, only that it was cut off at a certain moment. So the order of events in that theory goes as Yuji activating Supernova, Sukuna realizing that he's been hit with it, and when Yuji opens his hand in that next panel, the cleave is sent towards Sukuna, cutting off his arm, and then Yuta finishes the job with activating Jacob's ladder. It's interesting enough for me to consider and put in this video, but yeah, let me know what you guys think about that. Getting back to the point with Yuji currently being the strongest on the hero side, I do believe that this is the case. Yuji has taken multiple attacks that would have taken out anybody else in this fight by now, and he still has the energy to keep going. His body only really gave out momentarily after eating the enhanced Dismantle that Yuta ate, and even then, he's still regenerating himself and coming back into the fight. As Sukuna obviously finds Yuji quite boring and doesn't expect that much from him, the final plan for the sorcerers could be to bank on this fact in order to catch Sukuna off guard with Yuji's true strength, and once they've exhausted all of their options and weakened Sukuna as much as they could, Yuji will come in and take over the fight and finish the job. Although Yuji pales in comparison to a full-strength Sukuna, another 20 chapters of everybody jumping him and slowly nerfing him with all the buffs Yuji's gotten will even them out for their final battle, and I'm including Cleave as one of these buffs too because all the gods in Jujutsu Kaisen know that Yuji needs it. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about that little strategy. I think that's what's gonna happen because this one-on-one's gotta happen somehow. So now I'll address a couple of counters that could go against some of the evidence I brought up of Cleave being engraved into Yuji's body. And the first one I mainly see is that Gojo could have just been yapping. Yeah, sure, that could absolutely be the case as we have seen multiple characters get stuff wrong. However, I don't think Gojo would just think of that if he truly didn't believe it. Although people will bring up the infamous "nah, I'd win," he was comparing himself to Sukuna on a completely different topic, which is strength. He'd obviously be biased toward himself. Here, he has no reason to be biased. Another thing is that Gojo said in time, Yuji will get Sukuna's abilities, and in the series, it's only been 3 to 4 months max. I think Gojo was expecting Yuji to naturally progress as a sorcerer and not be thrown into all of this mayhem he's been in for the entire series. So I don't think he was expecting Yuji to get Sukuna's abilities within 3 to 4 months, but rather a much longer term of time and events and something of that nature, right? Probably 2 to 3 years. So I think with Yuji's growth being accelerated and his understanding of the soul massively increasing since that chapter, I'm sure that Yuji has found a way to shorten this process. But when Gojo was saying that, he was talking in a time where Yuji was going to be a normal student and there wouldn't be all this madness currently going on and forcing him to grow much faster. So yeah, to summarize, Gojo expected a longer, natural progression of Yuji's strength at the time of stating that. Another counter I saw throughout the community and reading the series for a bit was that it just shortened Yuji's fights and it's not fitting for his personality. To that, I think that is a great point, but when it comes to Sukuna, I don't think Yuji cares about how brutal things will get. Maybe against anybody or anything else, but Sukuna? Nah, he said he'd do anything to get rid of him. And the last one is about Yuji becoming the absolute strongest, and this goes against what Gojo wanted in terms of a proper future. He wanted a group to have the same amount of strength that he had alone. So nobody would ever face the isolation he once did when he stood on top of the world alone. So I get that. Maybe this could work if the other sorcerers catch up to Yuji as time goes on, but I still put this one last since I actually do agree with it and I can't counter it. But yeah, I don't think Yuji getting Cleave is going to be a perfect thing, right? Like, there could be problems with it. There could be something wrong with it. However, I still believe that it's going to happen and that's why I made this video. With that being said, guys, if you enjoyed the video, let me know what you guys think of it. Let me know if you think he'll be getting Cleave or not at this point. And with that, peace out and thank you for watching, guys. Have a good one.